Okay, the first thing which comes to my mind when I hear a transition metal complex is a picture, something like a transition metal is present at the center here, like this, and different ligands are present either in this fashion. I mean, one ligand here, the second one here, then the third one, and here is the fourth one. Moreover, two more ligands, fifth one and the sixth one here. And the second most common picture which comes to my mind once again after hearing a transition metal complex is like a transition metal once again at the center and different ligands present, let us say like this. The first one here, the second one here, and then the third one, and finally the last one, let us say like this or in this fashion. And no need to tell you people that where on one side this is an octahedral type of geometry. Let me write here the octahedral type of geometry. On the other side, this is what it is, nothing, it is representing a tetrahedral type of geometry as far as some transition metal complex is concerned. So I can simply show the different bonds here like this. Let us say this is the first bond here in between the transition metal and the ligand. And in the same way, I can draw here all the other bonds like this, and then in this way here, and moreover these two ligands also, the fifth one and then the sixth ligand here like this, such that an overall picture for this octahedral geometry or the octahedral complex will be like this. It will be like this. On the other hand, as far as the tetrahedral geometry is concerned, the bonding will be like this. It will be in between the transition metal and the ligand, the first bond, the second bond here, then the third one, and finally the fourth one here. And moreover, I can also represent it in a more perfect type of picture, which will be like this. It will be like this. Okay. So once again, dear students, I think this is the most common picture which comes into our minds when we hear a transition metal complex. Something like this, a octahedral type of geometry or a complex having a tetrahedral type of geometry. And it is this bond here, I mean this bond in between the metal and the ligand in which we are interested. It is this bond here in between the metal atom, transition metal atom, and the ligand in which we are interested, and we want to discuss about the nature of this bond. We want to see what type of bonding is actually there in between the metal atom or the ion which is present at the center with its ligands. And this whole lecture is about all this types of bondings in between the metal and the ligand. Like you can see here in the title, this is about the metal ligand bonding in the transition metal complexes. Okay, now let us have a look on different theories which are proposed to explain the bonding in between the metal and the ligands in case of transition metal complexes. Let me tell you, the first successful attempt was carried by Werner, and he also bagged a Nobel Prize for his theory. It was the Werner's coordination theory, and he was awarded this Nobel Prize in 1913. And the main thing about this theory was that the bonding can be explained on the basis of two different kinds of valencies. The first one, the primary valency, which is actually associated with the oxidation state of the transition metal, and Secondly, there was also a secondary type of valency which gives information about the coordination number of the complex. The secondary valency also determines the stereochemistry of any particular transition metal complex. For example, if the coordination number is 6, the geometry will be what? It will be octahedral. It will be octahedral type of geometry. But like any other theory, this theory was not even devoid of limitations. The only limitation of the Werner coordination theory was what? That the assumptions were not based upon theoretical justifications. So let me write here, this was the limitation of the Werner's coordination theory. And after that comes the Sedgwick's effective atomic number concept, or the Ian concept. He just extended the Lewis theory of electron pair to explain bonding in transition metal complexes. He said that the metal atom or the ion accepts electron pair from the ligands until it achieves the next noble gas configuration. And it also contains certain limitations, for example, certain drawbacks. Like you can see here, this concept here, that is the Ian concept of Sedgwick, it lacks the fundamental basis and gives emphasis on the stability of inert gas configuration in the complexes. I repeat, according to the Sedgwick's Ian concept, the transition metal, which is the central metal atom, it keeps on accepting electrons from the ligands like this. So we can show it like this, that this ligand here will give its electron and the transition metal will accept these electrons in this way, and all this will happen and it will continue until the transition metal here will achieve the next noble gas configuration, because we all know noble gases are known for their stability. So the Sedgwick simply connected the link between the inert gas stability and the transition metal complexes, in which the transition metal will keep on accepting electrons from the ligands until and only until it achieves the next noble gas configuration. And after that, some modern theories were also proposed, like the first one was the valence bond theory. So we will be dealing with the valence bond theory in a little detail in this lecture, and we will also see here that even this valence bond theory is having certain drawbacks or limitations, which I will be discussing in detail in the next slide. And we will also see that all these limitations or all these questions which this theory cannot give answers to, it can be given by with the help of a second theory, that is what? That is the crystal field theory. Different questions were there which were remained unanswered until we come up with the crystal field theory. And only with the help of the crystal field theory we were able to answer those questions which were not possible with the help of this valence bond theory. Later on, another theory came that was known as the molecular orbital theory. So as far as this series of lectures is concerned, we will focus only and only on the crystal field theory. But in this lecture, I will be discussing something about the valence bond theory only and the limitation. So now let us have a look on the valence bond theory. As you can see here on your screen, it was developed by Linus Pauling, and he assumes that this bonding, which we are talking from the very beginning in between the metal and the ligand, it is purely covalent in nature. And it presents a simple picture of the metal ligand bonding using the hybrid orbitals of the metal and the electron pairs of the ligands. Now after that, what happens is, suppose we are talking about some complex, let me write here, we are talking about some transition metal complex in which the geometry is, let us say, a tetrahedral type of geometry. So we know tetrahedral means what? The hybridization will be sp3. Now what happens is when one s orbital combines with three p orbitals, let me draw here the first one, the second one, and the third one here like this. What happens is it undergoes hybridization, the one s orbital here and these three p orbitals. Let us say this is the px, this is py, and this is the pz. Let us say it is 1s and it is 2px, 2py, and the 2pz. So when they undergo hybridization, it will result in the formation of four hybridized orbitals, because you can count from here. If we call this as one unit, this will be what? The p orbitals are total 3 units in number, so that it results in the formation of four hybridized orbitals in which one of the lobe will be larger like this. Let us say this is the first one here, this is the second hybridized orbital, and then the third one, and lastly the fourth one here. Now if you look here on this line, that is the appropriate vacant orbitals, that is sp or d of the metal atom. We are talking about the metal atom here. Let me write here the metal atom. These orbitals are for the metal atom or the metal ion. They hybridize. So what is happening here? It is the concept of hybridization. They are undergoing hybridization. They are undergoing hybridization to give a set of these four hybrid orbitals, because it is 1 plus 3 gives us 4 here, which are directed towards the ligands according to a definite geometry of the complex. The meaning of this thing is what? That if the transition metal is present here at the center like this, let us say this is the transition metal here. Now these atomic orbitals here, they will undergo some sort of hybridization, resulting in the formation of four hybridized orbitals, which are actually these, and they will be directed towards the ligands according to the definite geometry of the complex. At the starting, I have told you that we are talking about some complex here which is having a tetrahedral type of geometry. And we know a tetrahedral type of geometry is what it is like this. It is like this, the first bond, the second bond, the third one here, and then the fourth bond here. So now all these four hybridized orbitals, they will be directed at a specific angle according to this definite geometry of the complex. Means if the first hybridized orbital is directed like this, the second will be present here, something like this, and then the third one, and in the last the fourth one will be present like this. So this was an important generalization of the valence bond theory. Once again, the different vacant atomic orbitals of the metal atom, they simply undergo hybridization, resulting in the formation of some hybridized orbitals which will be directed in different directions according to the geometry of the complex. And after that, the last point which is there in case of valence bond theory is that the bonding in the metal, you can read from here, the bonding in the metal complexes, it arises when a filled orbital of the ligand, let us say we are having a ligand here, this is my ligand, and it is filled, it is having, let us say, these two electrons like this. So now when a filled orbital of the ligand containing a pair of electrons, it overlaps with these vacant hybridized orbitals of the metal atom. What will happen? It will result in the formation of a covalent sigma bond in which both the electrons are actually shared by the ligand and nothing is being shared by the metal atom. So now when this ligand will come here, the overlap will be like this. This is my ligand here, and both the electrons are given by the ligand itself, such that now whatever bond will be there in between this ligand and the transition metal, that will purely be a covalent bond, that will purely be a coordinate bond, because both the electrons are coming from one side. So in the same way, the second ligand will come here like this, sharing both the electrons from itself in this way. And then comes the third ligand here, once again the two electrons or the electron pair. And lastly, the fourth ligand, which will be like this. So this is all about the valence bond theory. I think you have got some rough idea that what the valence bond theory is all about. So after that, let us check out the limitations of this theory, because the main idea is what, that whatever limitations are there for the valence bond theory, or whatever questions are there which this valence bond theory cannot answer, those questions can be answered with the help of another theory, which is what, which is the crystal field theory, and which is of main focus to us as far as this chapter, that is metal ligand bonding in transition metal complexes, is concerned. So let us have a look here. The first limitation is what, that the valence bond theory provides only the qualitative explanation. It does not give any information about the quantitative analysis. So this valence bond theory is just telling us that the bonding, whatever is there in between the metal and the ligand, it is just a covalent bond. It does not give any numerical value. It does not give any value regarding the quantitative estimation or the explanations for these types of bondings in between the metal and the ligands. The second is, it does not explain the color as well as the electronic spectra of the complexes. It gives no idea why certain complexes are colored, why they show color. So this theory does not give any information about this thing. So obviously it is a limitation of this theory. And after that, you can read from here, it fails to explain why some complexes are low spin and some are high spin, although the oxidation state is same, the metal atom is same, the only difference is in the ligands here. For example, let us talk about the cobalt complex. In one case, the complex is like this, a 3 positive here. Let us compare this with another complex of cobalt in which the ligand is now not ammonia but it is fluorine 6, and let us say it is having 3 negative. In this case, cobalt is having oxidation state of +3, and same is the case here. So what I'm trying to say is that the metal atom is same, the oxidation state is same, but still we come to know that on one side this complex is what? This complex is low spin complex. On the other hand, this complex here in which the same metal atom is present, that is cobalt, having the same oxidation state, that is +3. This is what? This is a high spin type of complex. So the valence bond theory gives no idea, it gives no explanation that why it is happening. And after that, it gives no information about the relative stabilities of the complexes, that why some complexes are labile, on the other hand, some complexes are inert type of complexes. Now labile complexes are what? In which the displacement of the ligands is quite easy. Say we are having a complex like this, a transition metal here, and then it is bonded tetrahedrally to first ligand, the second ligand here, then the third, and let us say the fourth ligand. Now if we are carrying out some reaction here for this complex, and let us say we are adding some new ligand here, that is, let us say LX, if there is a possibility that it results in the formation of this type of complex, the same transition metal, these three ligands are present as it is. Let us say this fourth ligand here has been replaced by this LX, that is the new ligand. What we're gonna call it? We're gonna call this type of complex as a labile type of complex. Labile means that the displacement of this ligand here with this new ligand is quite easy. So it simply means that whatever complex we are having here, I mean this, it is a labile type of complex. It is not inert, it is reactive in nature. On the other hand, it has been seen that some complexes are inert in nature, and this type of reshuffling or this substitution by the ligands is not easy for those complexes. And once again, the valence bond theory does not give any information about this thing. It gives no idea that why all this is happening. So of course, this is also a limitation of the valence bond theory. And after that, it does not explain why the magnetic moments, that is mu, it varies with temperature. It gives no idea about this thing. It gives no explanation why the splitting of d energy levels takes place. I mean, if we are having these 5 d orbitals, why the splitting takes place like this or like this. The valence bond theory have no answers for such kinds of questions. And after that, it does not predict the relative stability of different structures, and moreover, it does not predict if we are having a 4-coordinate complex, whether it will be having a square planar type of geometry or a tetrahedral type of geometry. So let us say we are having some complex here in which a transition metal is there, and after that there are present 4 ligands like this. So we cannot say on the basis of the valence bond theory whether the geometry will be a tetrahedral type or it will be having a square planar type of geometry. And lastly, it gives no idea that why some ligands such as the water and the halide ion, they form high spin complexes. On the other hand, some ligands such as the cyanide ion forms the low spin complexes. No idea once again from the valence bond theory. And thus there was a need and there is a need for some other theory which can give answer to all these questions. So finally, it is the valence bond theory versus the crystal field theory, and we will be talking about the crystal field theory in our later lectures, online lectures. And so far we have seen that, okay fine, we have this valence bond theory. It explains the bonding as a coordinate type of bond in between the metal and the ligand in case of transition metal complexes, but it is having its own limitations. It is having its own limitations. Let me write here. And different questions are there which this theory is not able to answer. There are present various questions which the valence bond theory cannot answer. All these questions there, they can be answered with the help of the crystal field theory. So I think this is sufficient for this first lecture. So we will be discussing the crystal field theory in a greater detail in the coming lectures. So thank you so much.